It is 3:13 at WTMJ. Coming up, how do you talk to your kids, especially if you have young kids, in the wake of what happened in Texas and unfortunately has been happening over and over again, not just there, but the shootings in Milwaukee? How do you communicate with your kids? What's the right amount to talk about? That's up next on WTMJ. We're all trying to process what happened in Texas a couple of days ago and the horror that came along with it. How do you talk to your kids? How do you help your kids emotionally deal with things like this when they happen? Or when the shootings that happened in Milwaukee a couple of weeks ago outside the Deer District take place? How do you have those conversations? Nadine Levitt is an education advocate, speaker, author, the CEO and founder of Whirly EDU. Nadine is with us live this afternoon on the WTMJ hotline. Thank you so much, Nadine, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I guess the most basic question I have is, how do you know when your kids need your support and help, and when you should maybe stay out of the way and not put it in their face if they're not worried about it?
Yeah, there's definitely, look, I think the news, there's so much in the news, whether it's the shootings or other sort of, there's so much tumultuous news going on. When kids are experiencing any big emotions, there's usually telltale signs where you can lean in. It's also, though, an opportunity. You know your kids best, so it can also be an opportunity to develop empathy and to develop also the processing tools needed for those big emotions. So when you get to model with them and guide them through how they're feeling and help guide them through processing those feelings, it can also be a positive. I do think, speaking to all kids, I mean, when they're really, really young, you have to know your kids well enough and know that there's a gap between what they already know and what the reality is. But I think only a parent can know exactly when to step in.
Nadine, how important is it to limit your kids' access to the internet, social media, video, stuff like that when something like this happens? Because there's a lot of false information out there. What kind of guidelines would you suggest?
Yeah, think about the age appropriateness. For sure, and make sure that you're having conversations with, what did you see today on social media, so that you can really check on some of that, sort of fact check some of the information that they're receiving. I think it's also a really good time to explain to kids how important responsible decision making is. So it is about the emotional processing of things as well, but it's also about the responsible decision making. So some of the things like what happened in Texas today, where there was, kids posting about potential threats with more guns and things like that, school threats. So I think that there's, whatever reason people are posting things on social media, understanding that there are consequences to things like that, and understanding that both the consumption and what you put out there, you just have to be responsible and know that there are consequences.
Nadine, I also wonder about what age is appropriate to have that conversation, right? My daughters are 5 and 7. We have not spoken, my wife and I, to our children about the incident that happened in Texas. However, we have spoken to them about some of the drills they have in their school. And along with tornado and fire drills, there are dudes in the school with a gun kind of drills that they do. I'm wondering what the pivot point is. And is the pivot point when the child brings it up to you, right? Because at 7 and 5, we just don't feel like we need to bring this up and have a conversation about it.
Sure. I mean, it depends on what touch points they have to the news. So I think if you can be the gatekeeper of those of news, and if they have, for example, an experience, or they're likely to have an experience where they hear about this, or where they will experience whatever the news is. And if there's a big enough gap between what they already know and what they're about to learn, that's the jarring moment. So you as a parent have to be, it's a sort of a very personal decision. And I think a 5-year-old who probably won't have any access to news or won't have those access to schoolyard conversations about the shootings won't be as shocked, because they just won't have that development yet. So I think it's fine not to say anything at that point. But, a 7-year-old might be at school and people might be talking about it, because I think, it is a nationwide thing, and some parents will share and some parents won't share with their kids. And I think as long as you, whether you're the one to bring it up or whether it's them bringing it up to you, it doesn't matter so much as what you do when they do bring it up to you. Right. So making sure that they understand that you are somebody that they can go to, a trusted person who's not going to judge them anyway, who's going to tell them, the truth. It doesn't have to be the whole truth. I think you take it in bite-sized chunks so that you tell them what they can understand. You don't have to go into a whole sort of rabbit hole of graphic videos and so on and so forth.
Author and educator Nadine Levitt is with us. Her successful children's book series is My Mama Says. How do you know, Nadine, when you can't handle it as a parent your own and you need to seek out outside help or professional help for your children?
I think when kids start to really withdraw and they're not sort of sharing certain things, if they can't share how they feel, maybe they don't even know themselves how to feel, there's a big difference also between sort of some of the mental health issues that we're seeing where, even experts in the field need an outside perspective to help. So I just want to make sure that people understand that there shouldn't be any stigma around any of this. So finding help when you see your kids being, affected in a way that is isolating, or where there's depression, or when anxiety is really so high that it's limiting their ability to live life, right? So it's stopping them from doing certain things, then it's usually a good sign that they should talk to somebody outside of the family often, because it just is somebody who's sort of trained and professional who can know exactly which way to go.
Nadine, I keep thinking of things that make kids feel safe, right? Even though there's bad news, how important is it to provide your child with a routine, especially now kids kind of gain security and predictability with routine?
Especially now, absolutely. I think routine is one of those things where it does provide that safety, and that's understanding that, for example, that schools are safe. I think being able to have common language around where safety things are, and I think also having clarity around what is expected of them. And so whether it's, routines and routine of expectations, giving them a place to co-create that too. I think also understanding that before we are students or parents or teachers, we're actually human beings, right, with needs. And so the co-creation of routines, the co-creations of the understanding and the language around that clarity is really, really important. So sitting down with your kids, you can guide it, but letting them feel like they've got a voice to be heard if they have questions, if they have concerns around anything, but creating a safe space where you don't judge anything that they're saying to you, and you give them an honest answer. I think that's sort of that safe space.
Author and educator Nadine Levitt. Great stuff. Thank you so much, Nadine.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. If I may, one more thing is I think that what we've seen with all of these shootings is that it's sort of exacerbated also the environment that teachers are going into. So whether a student, a parent, or a teacher moving into schools, just understanding that they are really a safe environment to be in, and pushing that forward as that safety zone as well would be really key.
Yeah, great point. Thank you so much, Nadine. It is 3:26 at WTMJ.